Welcome to The Girlfriend God, a podcast in search of and in service to the divine feminine, bringing you an equal mix of academic research and emotional spiritual experience. Please rate and review on your podcast streaming platform. Leave a comment on YouTube. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Let's get in the flow. Okay, welcome to today's episode of The Girlfriend God. I have Dr. Carla with me and Kendal Elizabeth Parker, both of whom have been occasional co-hosts on the show. So today we're going to be talking about inaccurate mythological references in popular culture. So I know that you guys both have specific goddesses or stories that you want to address. But I want to start by saying, I posted this little rant to TikTok the other day about sacred terms being commodified, and in particular, the words goddess and the divine feminine. Because if you do a Google search for either of those things, the first thing you're going to find is self-help, yoga, find your own inner goddess. And I feel like that really does a disservice to people like me who are, I'm a very devout goddess worshiper. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of offended by that. Thoughts?
I have noticed the same thing. Like when you first ever reached out to me last year, and I was looking into your podcast and I typed it in on Google and all these random things came up and I thought, that can't be what she's about, surely.
Yeah. I don't exactly scream kale and yoga, right?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, why would she invite me to quote something talking about this? Like, that can't be right.
Well, like I understand the whole concept of, find the goddess within, because the goddess does live in me and in you and in you and in everyone. So I get that as a sense of empowerment, but then like, where's your part in that relationship with the goddess? You know what I mean? Where's your gratitude or your awe or reverence or, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I have, and I've had the same problem with neo-paganism and witchcraft, right? Like it's all about personal power. And I think if you're trying to practice these things as an actual religion and a faith, it doesn't work that way. At least in my worldview, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I agree. I think that we're coming up against something here, it's going to be an interesting movement forward, because I think for a long time, the goddess, that sort of yoga-ish, neo-ish, whatever it is, I don't know, utilization or commodification of it, I think it was like new and fun and whatever. But I think now that people are coming to the spirituality part of it, there will be some pushback to say exactly what we're saying. Okay, how do we differentiate between you being whatever, having a business around the goddess, and us being worshipers of the goddess, and without much antagonism. I don't want to do it the masculine way, right? I don't want to, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be like, this is my term, I own it. Like there's an ownership, like, there's a patriarchal sort of idea. So that's going to be interesting, I think, Kelly. I think that's a good point to raise. I'm not sure where it will go, but yeah, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, and it happens with other terms too. Like it's been happening with shaman for multiple years now, and that isn't being commodified as like your inner shaman or whatever. But I think there are a lot of people in the world that are calling themselves shamans, just as there are a lot of people in the world who call themselves healers. And I believe that there are real shamans in the world, and I believe that there are real healers in the world, but not nearly as many as what is out there if you try and research either of those terms, right? Yes. I think part of the problem was the whole novelty of it, and some missteps that we took when spirituality became big business, right?
Mhm.
When spirituality became a means to an end, and I don't know.
And that was how many thousands of years ago though, right? Because like
Right,
who are the richest sort of religious factors or right
right,
corporations
right,
in the world?
right,
Well, there's lots of religious corporations and businesses, and so I think that that's not necessarily just for the goddess. I think that people have really seen that for a long time, and now how
right,
do you capitalize on it? Yeah.
right. So, let's move on. So, Kendall, I know that you have very specific things, and Kendall told me, Carla, before you got here, that her list has grown. So let's
Yay.
talk about some of those things. What do you
All
have,
right.
Kendall?
Okay, so I'll basically run you down on the things that I want to discuss and then you complete thoughts in. So first and foremost, the whitewashing of Andromeda and Medea, like this infuriates me because all the ancient sources quite clearly say they were dark-skinned, and yet they're played by white women, or they're painted as white women, or they're depicted in TV as white women, and why, basically.
Yeah.
Also, over Christmas, started watching this show called Lucifer.
Mm.
Thought it might be fun until a couple of seasons in, all of a sudden he's got a mum, and I'm like, pretty
No.
sure there isn't a Gaia in Christian mythology. Like, what's this? So
Uh-huh.
I thought, right, I need to talk to you about that because that's just ruined the show for me.
I
Mhm.
do like that. So the Supernatural series at least made the distinction between Lucifer and the King of Hell, that those were two different people.
Okay, right, I've not seen that.
So, I mean, we could talk a lot about Supernatural, but I think
Pretty good.
I love Supernatural, but I mean, with some of the mythology that they talked about, they must have had a consultant as an advisor to the writing board, because some of the things were, no. Carla's like, no, none of it was
I
accurate.
love Supernatural, I do. I love it, but I suspend all of my academic knowledge when I watch it because if I don't, I will be tweeting them going, can I help you? Can I please help you with this? This is my goal. This is one of my goals is I would like to be a consultant on the goddess on anything to do with Hollywood. But I've come to the realization that I don't think Hollywood cares.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So it's like, yeah. But I do love Supernatural, of course. But I don't know. Some of it is a bit cliche.
I always wanted to, when I watched Supernatural, I always wanted to know if there was a script for the show available online somewhere, because I was curious about the Latin they used and the spells that they cast.
Oh, I was thinking of that too. I've been rewatching it, and especially when Dean says some of the stuff, I'm like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Right. They were just like talking
but you look
Latin,
at
doesn't care
saying
what,
it.
doesn't matter what you say.
How many hotties speak Latin or attempt? Not that many, so I kind of let it slide.
Right. So who else, Kendall?
Sorry. Also, another show, ironically written by the same person, called The Sandman. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes. We
Yeah,
No.
really we really enjoyed that. Oh, Carla,
yeah,
you
that
haven't seen that? You
that
must.
was really good, but it seemed to be like very Christian mythology based again. And then is it? I can't not say it because it's in Greek. The Grae, or the three sisters that share the same eye.
Oh, the Graces?
Yeah,
That's the
that's the
English
one.
word. Okay, yeah.
Um, like they were just in it, and I'm like, what? Why? Just
Yeah.
randomly place them in there with Cain and Abel and Lucifer.
Yeah. That's odd.
So I don't know if it's Netflix is doing this and they just don't care, or whether it's the actual writer Neil Gaiman that's just don't
I
care.
think the writers don't care because history isn't good TV, right?
Yeah.
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 Like I think it's good like to have these depictions in like popular culture. So like people like my daughter, for example, as she gets older, can have a way of accessing these things for the first time. But I feel like they need to make it more accurate.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, I have yet to see a TV show, especially a popular TV show, that has gotten many of these things right.
Yeah, I cannot think of one, Kelly, when you were sending out that list of what do you want to talk about, I had a huge list of everything I could talk about that was not accurate, but I cannot think of one. I'll have to think about it, but I cannot think of one that I thought was historically accurate,
Right.
you know?
So let's talk about so Kendall, have you seen the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina?
I haven't.
Okay.
I was a big fan of the original show and I was worried they'd ruined it.
It was actually really good. It was actually really good. I was
Okay.
sad that I was sad that it ended, but thank goddess, at least it was a show that had, I'm sensing that people in Hollywood are getting the message that don't just drag on the show. If it has a natural ending, that's why now we're seeing TV shows that only have 3 seasons or 2 seasons or 4 or whatever. It's not like the old days when, I mean, network television, a season was like 24 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to commit to 24 episodes anymore.
Those are the good old Star Trek days.
Yeah, yeah. It was network, this is a total aside, but it was NYPD Blue was probably the first and only show that was on network television that I watched every season. I watched the whole thing and that was on the air for like 11 years.
Oh, wow.
So, who else is on your list before we get into Sabrina? Because I think Carla and I probably both have a lot to say about Sabrina.
Um, I think that's the main ones I wanted to talk about.
Okay. Have you
And you guys
seen?
can talk about Lucifer because I don't watch that show. I tried to watch a first season of it and I was like, it's not happening for me.
I didn't watch it.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay.
We watch so much television that our standards for good TV is very high. So anything that aired on a network channel, we usually pass. Like all this stuff we watch on Showtime and HBO and AMC, especially AMC. We love every AMC show we've ever watched. So let's go back to Sabrina.
Okay.
Well, first of all, there was a Lucifer Morning Star in Sabrina.
Yes.
Who I do not know that much about.
Okay.
Do you?
You mean in Sabrina or in
Yeah.
like in I don't remember what happened. Oh my gosh, I watched it so long ago. It was weird at the end because I think there was like a son of Lucifer as well that she ended up kind of falling in love with, right?
Yes.
And then there's the Lucifer that was supposedly controlling Lilith. I don't even remember what he looked like now that you mention it. Yeah.
Me neither.
I don't pay attention to the men that much.
Right. So Kendall, I think.
Oh no, but he was always like the goat head dude, right? He always had that weird devil. He had the devil look. They made him like a gross goat head. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was really, really annoying. I really hate the way they represent Lucifer and the devil, and I really hate everything about the devil. And I don't mean that like I don't like the devil. I mean, it's such a fiction.
Right. I mean, the devil is purely a Christian creation. Right? Is that true?
Yeah, certainly the horn dude is. That's Pan. That's a combination of Pan and the trident of Poseidon and
Cernunnos.
yeah, like It's fan fiction. That's what I call the devil, fan
Yeah,
fiction.
just a concoction of every other religion.
Yeah, exactly. It's Christian, it's an invention. When I tell my students, I'm like, the devil's not a real thing. They're always looking at me like, what? And I'm like, it's not a real thing. I'm not saying evil in the world is not a real thing, because there is
Right.
evil in the world, or negative energy, or whatever you want to call it. But the devil, and the way that it's portrayed, certainly on TV, that's just pure horror fantasy. Like,
Right.
you know?
But Lucifer has an actual mythology quite separate from the devil. I know a lot of people that think that the devil and Lucifer are the
That's
same
right.
person, but
Mhm.
they're not, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Am I
Yes.
right about that? Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing in Sabrina, Hecate.
Mm.
Now, some of the things they got some of the things right, right? Like they talked about the crossroads and her being kind of the patron goddess of witchcraft, which is true. But then they conflated her with the triple goddess, which is very much that's a neo-pagan thing. So from my understanding, Hecate was not at all, she was never thought of as a triple goddess until Sabrina. Is that true?
Oh, no. That's not true. In the sense that the triple goddess, which is the maiden mother crone, I think,
Right.
has been conflated with Hecate for a long, long time. I think Sabrina just piggybacked on a well-known established trend. I've seen this a lot lately, and I don't know what to think, because actually just today I went through some of my photos at the museum, and there are representations of Hecate in three women, kind of like the Graces, right? There is an overlap in the ancient world. But I never, she's not my goddess in the sense of I've never really done that background research. I did look at her as sort of associated with the moon and the darkness and the Queen of Witches, and her connection to Artemis through that. But I've recently started seeing more and more posts in Facebook groups, for example, that follow Hecate, and they're talking more and more about how she's not a triple goddess. So this topic has come up.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure, but it's something that I would love to look into, because I want to upload a course about her eventually. So there's a lot of Hecate sort of primary source, but I would really like to make maybe one of the chapters or modules on this idea, because I'm not sure. I've seen her represented as three women. Now, so I'd have to go back and look at where this is, like, let's say the statue, the one that I have in mind, I think it's Greek, but I don't remember. So when, where, who found her, so you have to kind of look back at those details and see.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like I recently saw the end of last year a Greek statue of her at the British Museum, and she was depicted as three women back to back.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking,
Okay.
like, I don't know why she was depicted in that way, but maybe that's where this idea is coming from.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that does go back to antiquity. That's interesting. I know I don't have these things committed to memory, but I learned, Hecate is one of the goddesses that I worked with more closely than others for a long time. And it got me through a really dark period because she's a dark goddess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a lot about her, so much so that I followed the instructions, and I had to write an essay, and I had to take a bunch of steps to become a dedicant of the Covenant of Hecate, which is run by, I'm gonna mess up her name. It's Sarita. Yeah.
Is it Sarita Deste?
Yes.
Oh my God. I
Yes.
love her. I love her book on Artemis. I'm going to interview her for my podcast, Kelly. I'm so excited.
And she started the Covenant of Hecate and the
Yes.
church that they have in New York.
Oh, I didn't know that I knew that she had like a covenant group, but I didn't
Mhm.
realize it was quite that large or that's awesome. Yeah, Hecate is her goddess for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so I learned a lot about Hecate then, and what what academic research I did. She's very much she's a very ancient primordial. She's a primordial goddess.
Yeah.
Um, but I think what's interesting, and I've talked about this a little bit before, that the trend that I see is a goddess like Hecate will appear in popular culture, and then all of a sudden she's everywhere. Because there was a time when I, as a Westerner in the United States, had never heard of Hecate. But
Hmm.
once she appeared on the scene on social media, then she was everywhere. I saw the same thing happen with Ellen of the Ways, right? Like one person made a Facebook group, and then all of a sudden I started to see her name pop up in my feed on different social media platforms. So I've seen that happen kind of again and again and again and again, which in a way I think is good. But in another way, people are so quick to jump on bandwagons in social media, they don't bother to like verify their sources. Like I wish everybody had a little academic that lived inside of them. That when they came
This is
across
what I'm
something
trying to
that,
do with this is what I'm trying to do with these courses, Kelly. This
yeah,
is my
yeah,
frustration. We've talked about it a lot because, but I feel like I think doing it small and just giving people some like trusted basics is I think it's fundamental to these groups.
yes,
And even just anybody that wants to, because it's true, like when you Google stuff, how do you know? And then let's say you go to some sources or some sites that are trustworthy sites. Let's say you can figure that out. But then it's like, where do you start? What's the context? You have to talk about translation a little bit. You have to. So I get it why people sometimes are like, well, I don't want to do a classics degree for 4 to 6 years,
you're right.
right? I just want to learn about Hecate, somebody help. So this has been sort of my inspiration, but I think the problem is that there's too much information, maybe too.
Yes, there's definitely an information overload.
Yeah.
And since you are both academics, I'm sure that when the average person wants to learn about things, all the journal articles are behind a paywall. So what are we supposed to do?
Yes.
Mm.
If we don't have an academic in our lives, like I have you guys and my friend Ayla who lives here in town, so I can email you and be like, I really need this JSTOR article. Can you get it for me? But not everybody has that. And not everybody knows that they need that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think we're on a crusade to push source material. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there was somebody else, Kendall, I thought there was somebody else on your list.
Oh,
No?
I don't know.
Well, is anybody coming to mind as we're having this conversation?
um, Medea, Andromeda, Gaia and Lucifer.
What
Mm.
about Kabale? Does she show up in popular culture?
She doesn't know. Like I've actively looked
Yet.
for that. She doesn't.
Yet.
No.
Yeah.
She'll be the next Hecate and be conflated with her.
Oh no.
I think that's a good point, Kendall. I think you're absolutely right. I can't think of Kybele being anywhere. Um, I think because the mother role is so saturated, and
Right.
Kybele is often seen as sort of that mother nurturing. So, for example, instead of Kybele, we get a lot of Isis, and we get a lot of maybe not as much Isis, but a lot of Demeter, Hera. I'm trying to think of who's the mother in on TV shows like yeah, who plays the mother on mythological shows? I can't
Right. I
think of
mean,
that role.
like in Sabrina, I mean, that was one of the Hecate was kind of pigeonholed in Sabrina as the protector, mother role, right? And although Hecate can be those things, she's a lot more than that. right?
You know
That's where I
that
feel like they got it right a little bit, because they talked about things like keys and thresholds and crossroads, and
Yeah.
I don't think they left her any offerings at the crossroads, but
No, but that brings up a good point, because one of my pet peeves has always been, for example, in fairy tales is the absent mother. And right. And it's like, we can do a whole podcast on the absent mother. But now that we're thinking about, even in Sabrina, she doesn't have a mother, right? Like there's a lot of shows that have women heroes or heroines that don't have mothers, or their mothers have passed away. They have aunts, or they have a dark mother, or the father. And now that I'm thinking of it, it's like, yeah, I can think of a lot of those examples, but I cannot really think of a female heroine or a heroine, which is redundant, but that has a strong mother figure in the show that has not passed away.
I mean, obviously, Lucifer's mother in Lucifer, but she's not
Right, but that's the
named as
point.
Gaia, but how they describe her that's basically what they're aiming for.
Right. But that's a mother and son relationship. Those are very big, right? But a mother and daughter relationship with a strong daughter
Ooh.
and a strong mother.
Saying that, actually, later in the Lucifer series, there's like a demon that comes to Earth with Lucifer, and she's like really strong, fierce, powerful character, and her mother is Lilith.
So dark mothers and dark daughters are acceptable.
yes, and I feel like I can't think of any off the top of my head. Maybe I will. Maybe it'll come to me while we're still recording. But I do feel like there are mother, strong daughter dynamics, and representations of witchcraft, right? Because traditional witchcraft is a bloodline.
Right.
Like you have to be born into the witchcraft you practice. So I do feel like that's out there, with series like, well, I don't know. I mean, even in Sabrina, right? It's in her bloodline. That's why she's with her aunts.
What's in her bloodline? You mean the power?
Witchcraft, the power. Yeah, the power. The power is in her bloodline.
Yeah.
You know,
no
it's
mom.
it's not like I haven't seen every witch movie under the sun, but I can't bring to mind a good example of that.
Ooh, I can think
But
of one. I mean, I've not seen it since I was a kid, but Charmed.
yes,
They're all, yeah, they're all sisters, and they get it from their mother.
But their mother
and
is not in the
No,
show.
she's not. This is true.
This is what I'm saying. There's a lot of women, powerful women don't have living mothers. I mean, that's a big statement, but
right.
but it seems to be the favorite of Hollywood, certainly, that powerful women need to be sort of the only, the sort of tip of the pyramid. There's no one, everyone's either dead or gone or absent or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, like it's fascinating to me. I saw this a lot with fairy tales, because I teach a course on fairy tales and I do this one a lot. But now that I'm thinking of it, like I'm trying to think of and I'm sure maybe later on they'll come to us, but obviously they're rare enough that they don't come to mind. Where,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? The
Right,
main
right.
character, like I'm thinking like a Gilmore Girls relationship, right? Like a
Right.
mother-daughter relationship where and then that's not exactly the same, because even if the daughter's super powerful, she could have the mother around and this sort of banter and strength and all, I can't really think of that for female heroines.
No.
But male heroes have fathers and they have mothers. Not always, but I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. It irks me. It irks me a little bit. Because
because back to Supernatural, right? Their mother was dead.
Yep.
But they inherited their stock and trade from their father.
And he was around.
Yes.
Which made them hard men because they didn't have that caring, loving mother So that's their sort of their flaw, their fault is like they're hard, or they're that's their burden to bear, is that their mother died when they were young and they blame themselves and all that stuff.
And I'm also trying to think of, I can't think of any examples of the kind of the kind of bond that we're talking about between daughters and fathers.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, that kind of bond is not really possible between daughters and fathers,
I get that. But
right?
I'm saying, like, having a daughter that inherited witchcraft or some other form of magic from her father rather than her mother.
Yeah. Yeah. Even having a strong father in a heroine's life, it becomes a complicated relationship. It's not
Right.
very loving. Again, there's this idea, I think, that hard women or strong women can't be seen like nurturing or vulnerable. And I don't know how to explain it. It's in my
Right.
mind. You know what I
I
mean?
think I know what you mean.
Yeah, like there's this sort of cliche that we've been seeing, or whatever trend.
Right.
And it's like they have to be alone in a way. They're masculinized. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
like
the word.
Hollywood don't want to see a strong woman as anything soft, like anything that's
Right.
capable of love, let's say.
Right,
She needs to be outcast.
right.
So I was thinking about the original The Craft. Did that come
Yeah,
out in the
yeah,
90s?
yeah.
And I'm trying to remember what their relationships with their mothers were. Like,
I
one
don't
had a
remember
good
those
one had a
relationships.
good relationship with her. The other one, the mother was like a dysfunctional alcoholic or something. And I can't remember about the other two. But I don't know, the craft, kind of the message of the craft was, yes, you can be a powerful woman, but be careful, because that's a power that you can abuse. And I think that should be the message anybody who's practicing witchcraft. These things that you're learning, if you actually learn them, they're powerful. And you have to know your own strength before you practice things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like all those people looking for personal power. I think, okay, what are you going to do when you get it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What are you going to do with it? I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
at a list of top witch movies of all time. And, like Practical Magic. It was all about
I
trying to bring back
love
the dead
practical
boy.
magic.
Yeah, but it's all about trying to bring back the dead boyfriend.
Right. And again, they don't have mothers. They have aunts,
Yeah, they do.
Right.
right? Again. Um, yeah, exactly. And it's all about some dude, you know? I mean,
Yes.
and this has been my thing, I think, is that witchcraft, even in Sabrina, my biggest pet peeve is the way that they switch the language.
Yes.
Um, Instead of, oh my God, they're like, oh my Lucifer, everything black is white, everything dark is light, or everything light is dark. And I was like, this is so cheesy. It's so shitty. Like, do you really think witches, like they made a point to make sure that we love the show, but we don't want to be the show. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
we love the witches, but we don't want to be the witches because they really are devil worshippers, which actually witches are not devil worshippers.
Right.
And that was my biggest turn off. It's like, I had such high and that was maybe not, I didn't watch the TV show. I don't remember if on the TV show they were devil worshippers.
I don't know.
Did you watch it, Kendall?
Is this a Sabrina?
Yeah,
No, the original one was a children's show.
right.
She was
Yeah.
just a white witch.
No, this was very clear
And
that,
they were, I mean, in the beginning of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, they all belong to the Church of Night. So they essentially are Satanists,
yeah, they were all
right?
Satanists. Yeah. Like that's so I had a lot to say about that. Maybe I should have written a blog. I had a lot to say about that. I was so, and my daughter, my daughter loves witches, and she may one day be a practicing witch. I don't know. She's been reading on witchcraft her whole life since she was little. And we watched it together, excited. And that was the one thing that I was like, this is ridiculous. They're really pushing the Satan worship, Satan everything. And I'm like, witches don't do that.
Right. What about The Witches of Eastwick?
Oh, I haven't seen that in forever.
Seen it, Kendall?
Mhm.
You're so young.
Well, what about the one with the three witches that came out right now at Halloween? The remake.
Hocus Pocus?
Yeah, Hocus Pocus.
Oh, my little girl loves that.
I love it too, but it really makes there's no discussion of how the witches are witches or became witches, and aren't they related?
Yeah, they're sisters.
Right.
Sisters? Yeah. They certainly have
And
no mother.
no, I think in the original Hocus Pocus, there's like no explanation of how they became what they became. But in the
Right.
remake in Hocus Pocus 2 that they released at Christmas, it shows you them as children and how they became witches.
Oh, I think you're right. Oh my God, I watched that.
Yeah, they met like a really old an ancient witch in the wood, and she gave them her spell book.
That's right. So they inherited from a woman.
From an older woman, yeah.
A dark mother figure, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot there to be said that we haven't really maybe thought about, you know what I mean? Like you think about it in the moment, but then you haven't really had a discussion. I think that we could do a whole season just on picking a film and then taking it apart. Maybe that should be our side podcast is like, let's watch this movie and talk about it on witches, because there's a lot, like there's so much.
Right. Like I'm looking at, all these TV shows that I forgot about. Like I watched A Discovery of Witches.
Oh, I started that, but I didn't finish it.
I've got the book, but I've never seen it.
Okay. Anything to say about the books?
I've not read it yet.
Oh, okay. The season of American Horror Story with the witches.
Oh, I liked that one.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I did. There was at least a lineage, right? Like they had to have a new supreme.
Yeah, and I liked that like they weren't like outright evil either. Like they'd not portrayed them as like this horrible Satanist worshipping women.
I like A Discovery of Witches a lot. Let's see. Once, The Magicians, Cursed, Charmed, Merlin. Anybody see Merlin?
No. I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it.
I'm the only one that watched that. I'm obsessed with Arthurian legend mythology, so I don't know. It's just a thing. It's a thing with me. Part of my.
I know. I watched something with Merlin, but I've watched a few things with Merlin. He's always in there.
There's witches in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes, but I don't remember them.
Meadow was a witch.
Oh, Meadow, yeah. Again, no mother.
Wasn't Willow also a witch?
Oh, that's what I meant. What did I say? Meadow? No, I meant Willow.
Oh, Willow. Also, Buffy has a mother, but the one thing that pissed me off about Buffy's mother is Buffy's mother is clueless.
Right.
Clueless. She is the absent mother. She is like, oh my God, what's going on? Like she has no idea that her daughter is a superhero for 15 years, And she always says the dumbest stuff. Oh, you're doing this? Oh, this woman has this old man hanging around with your daughter has an old man as a mentor hanging around with her, and she hangs out at the library with him all the time, and you never go, is that okay? Because I have a daughter. Let me tell you, if she was 15 hanging out with her teacher, I would be like, I don't know about this. Let me
right.
Maybe bring my baseball bat just in case,
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. But I love Buffy, don't get me wrong. But when we think about these kinds of things,
right.
Yeah.
Well, because not only do misrepresent goddesses and witchcraft, but they also misrepresent lore of things like vampires and werewolves and
I used to teach a course
spirits.
on vampires
Did you?
for many years at the university. Yeah, and it was basically because I come from Romania and Transylvania, and I can't even remember how they gave me this course, but they gave me this course, and I went to town with the misrepresentation. I even went as far as saying Bram Stoker culturally appropriated my culture and made a killing off of vampire lore and misrepresented our king and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like all that stuff is a problem.
So that's a good segue to talk about Lilith in True Blood.
See, now I've seen True Blood. I love that show. I can't remember a Lilith.
Really?
Yeah, towards the end.
Season 5 and 6. Yeah, it was.
Remember, she's like all naked and bloody, and she's something to do with Bill, right? Like that was not in the books. Have you guys read the books?
I have read the books.
I've read the books. So I don't think that and don't quote me because it was a long time ago that I read the books, but I don't think she was in the books, but she was definitely in the show.
No, I don't remember her in the books either, but I don't remember her in the show.
It was like 2 whole seasons because Lilith was the goddess that the lore that they presented in the show is that Lilith was the first vampire that God created.
That's ringing a bell. I'm thinking it was that terrible. I've just blocked her out.
So she was the what's the word? Progenitor,
yeah.
I think that's what they called her. Yeah. But because I was looking at this online this morning, Lilith talks to Bill and essentially says that she still kind of works for God.
Yeah.
She claims that she herself is not a god, that there's still, the God, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. Like, why would she not be the ruler of her people or something? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the mythology that they presented was like Lilith was the first vampire and Adam and Eve were the first humans who would then create more humans so that the vampires could feed, so that the vampires had a food source. Like that was the role of Adam and Eve, right? Was to perpetuate that race so that the vampire race always had a food source. I may be remembering that I may be misremembering that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but there is lore that says that Lilith went back to God. There is ancient lore that does say that God had welcomed her back in.
Right. Didn't they have like a love-hate relationship?
Yeah. Yeah,
like
they
he would banish her, but then he would put her in charge of something and okay.
Yeah. So maybe that's where they got that from. But as the lead, I mean, her children were demons. I guess maybe that's where the vampire link came from.
Right.
Assuming that people believe that vampires are demons. I mean, it's such a hop, skip, and a jump, right? Everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But even with Lilith, I mean, I think their quest was I think what winds up happening at the end of the segments with Lilith is there's a vial of Lilith's blood that they are not allowed to drink because it's too powerful. It's too powerful, but it's like part of their like kind of worshipy altar thing is this vial of blood.
Familiar. Yeah.
And then Bill winds up drinking the whole fucking thing. That's how that season ended. And then I don't remember what happens after that.
Bill. Yeah.
Bill, the moody song.
It's coming back, guys. I've seen it all over my TikTok lately. People are starting to rewatch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mum asked if we could the other day. Like, let's watch that again. That was great.
I think we rewatched it after some years, but it's been a while.
It's good. It's so good, but it's such a mismatch of just like every supernatural thing they could think of.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of what we see happening on a grand scale, right? Is that the goddesses are, I mean, in a way, they're almost generic because they play the same role in all the movies and the TV shows that they're in, which is often that mother role. like you said, Carla, these absent mothers. So the goddess takes on the role of mother, which is great and accurate, but not all there is to it. You know what I mean? Like goddesses are not interchangeable. That's why we have more than one.
I've
Go
thought
ahead,
of another thing.
Kendall.
Share it. Share it.
Again, Neil Gaiman. Good Omens. Has anybody seen it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, you have to watch it.
the
I think
character, what's
so.
his
Is
name
that the
now?
one with Michael Sheen?
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah,
angel
okay.
and demon
Yeah.
Yeah.
relation.
Demon Crowley, right? He's
Yes,
presented
yes.
at the beginning of the show as the snake that gave Eve the apple. But
Right.
isn't the snake that gave Eve the apple supposed to be Satan himself? But he's just a demon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I love that show. It's very smart in the sense that it does not make one bad or the other one good. It
Yeah.
shows the complexity of those two things. And then of course
I also liked that Beelzebub and God were women in that.
Yes. Yes.
yes. You know, that's one of my favorite things. The first time that I ever saw God as a woman in a movie was in that movie, Dogma.
Dogma. I love that movie because
Alanis Morissette is my
Alanis
babe.
Morissette plays God. I was like, yes, she is. I love Alanis Morissette,
Me
like
too, me too.
borderline worship.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I saw that she was God, I was like, that is perfect.
I think that was the first time they began depicting her in like a popular film as possible. Because now I think it's a bit on trend to depict God as a woman. Like I've seen that often now, you
Right.
know, which is good. I mean,
Right. Well, when I talked to when I recorded my episode with David Justice, but you know, the young Christian man that I spoke to and didn't frighten him away. One of the things that I mentioned to him was because we were talking about this kind of pop culture thing. And I remember when the movie The Shack came out, The Shack, it was like this big Christian thing. It was like, it was fucking everywhere.
no.
You know, the way The Secret was everywhere for like new agey people. The Shack was like everywhere for modern day Christians. So
Okay.
in the book, which was horribly written, but I wanted to read it because everybody was talking about it. And they followed this in the movie. In the movie, the Holy Spirit, because the whole Trinity is there, but the Holy Spirit is played by Olivia Spencer, who I love, who was portrayed as a large Black woman. And I thought, yes, the Holy Spirit could totally be a large Black woman. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But when the movie came out, Christians were pissed. They were pissed that the Holy Spirit was not only female, but female and Black.
Of course they were.
Yeah, they were freaking out. Protests at movie
This is
theaters.
our not shocked face.
Yeah.
That brings us back to Kendall's point at the beginning, which is why these characters like Medea and stuff have been whitewashed. I had a huge debate. And you guys probably get this too, in the Goddess Reads group on Facebook when I posted a video of the Bronze Warriors, and I just put a little blurb saying, ancient Greeks and certainly gladiator Greeks may have been brown skinned and may have been, they're probably not blonde with blue eyes because even Greeks today are not blonde with blue eyes. Oh my God, did I ever have some dudes irked with that? Irked. Wow. I even had a guy who asked me for proof, and I found this article that had like it was a really heavy read of DNA analysis of what the ancient Greeks might have been, what their DNA. Anyway, I sent him this whole thing. Okay. He didn't read it, of course. And he went, well, that's just one article of like 150 pages of DNA diagnosis and discussion.
Right.
People were so irked, men. I should be fair to say men, because that was the only people that really challenged.
Right.
And then, of course, when I kind of went, okay, obviously you're not interested in reading that, then they became abusive. I had to block them on the page.
I missed that one because I would have been there.
It was
Like
a
the
long time. It was in
TikTok.
the beginning. But yeah, people, and I know this is big now in academia, is to authenticize the DNA of the ancients. But I think Hollywood has done such damage with blonde Brad Pitt and blonde every Greek possible with a British accent.
Blonde hair and blue eyes, like, aren't they like originally like the Vikings?
Mm.
No, Norse. Like, why would it be Greek?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, and that's been going on forever too, right? Because look at all of our modern day artwork of Jesus, who's the, long-haired white dude.
Yeah. Blue-eyed,
Yeah.
blue-eyed,
Blue-eyed, long-haired
Semitic
white
man.
dude, when we know that is inaccurate.
Right.
That is inaccurate.
Yeah.
So yeah, the whole whitewashing thing, that's been going on since the beginning of time. Not the beginning of time, but certainly the beginning of Christianity.
Yeah.
So Carla, I'm curious, in early Christian history, were depictions of Jesus accurate?
That's a good question. So I'm not that much of an expert, but I will say that in, for example, the Greek Orthodox Church, Jesus was darker skinned and darker hair and dark eyes. I'm trying to think of what paintings come to mind. I think that the whitewashing of Jesus, and don't quote me, is not as old as Christianity.
Mm.
And I don't know when it starts. Like, we'd have to get an expert on that. I don't know when it starts. It's definitely anglicized, you know what I mean? So by the time we get to the Protestant church, by the time we get to colonization, it's definitely anglicized. But I have a feeling it probably started a bit before that. I mean, because like Byzantine, for example, depictions there's a certain kind of art, and those art doesn't always allow for blonde, flowing brown hair or blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right, right.
Yeah, so my instinct is to go sort of Anglo colonization period. So I don't know what that is, 1500s, let's say, you know. Today, if you walk into here in a Greek Orthodox church, it's it's not like dark, but it's a darker, because I think the Greeks have been more familiar with darker skin Mediterranean peoples. So
right.
they see themselves in that, so it doesn't offend them in any way. Do you know what I mean?
Right, right.
So I think that people depict Jesus the way that they see themselves. And so, of course, for, let's say, some of the Westernized or Nordic Europeans, perhaps at some point they decided, let's make him blonde and blue-eyed. But of course, there's that whole racism. I mean, with even with the colonization of South America, they had like those color strips, those like paint strips to sort of separate people based on skin color. And there are actually like writings in the journals of those early colonialists that talk about how God likes the light skins best, but he likes you too, and there's a sort of a hierarchy of who God favors. And they would blatantly say that white people are more preferred by God, even though that's not in the Bible itself. But I mean, we could do that forever, because the King, when King James edited his own Bible, he took out all the words and replaced them and made it seem like, I know, for example, he did oh man, it's not coming to me now, but he did a line where it says, I am black, but I am beautiful, from the Bible. And somebody had translated, like, the original translation was, I am dark and beautiful, something like that. Like, so he changed the wording around. And then the King James version, of course, becomes the Bible, the version that all of the West Indies have, and the Caribbean. And so there's a lot of whitewashing there. Of course, in the Bible itself, Jesus never has blue eyes. I mean, if he had blue eyes, everyone would talk about it, right? Like,
right.
Right. Light green eyes too. I mean, there are green-eyed Semitic people, but that's still something that's seen as different or unique or beautiful, and so that would have been mentioned too.
Right.
I would really love to see movies and films in Hollywood cast in this diversity of actual real historical culture. I think it would be
Yeah.
so wonderful. And I think a lot of the repainting of statues is shaking up a little bit of that.
Mhm.
And Kendall, I don't know if you probably come across this, some of the paintings in Pompeii, some of the painting. So, for example, people don't know that, Emperor Severus in Britain, right, the Roman emperor who came to Britain, whose face stands in front of the British Museum. They don't know he's African because his head bust is white, like it's white marble. It's made of white,
Yeah.
People don't know that, people send me stuff and they're like, is this true? Was this, like, I'm a Roman expert. And I mean, I'm not a Roman emperor expert. I know this dude was definitely an African emperor. And people pass by him all the time when they go in the British Museum and they don't know that he was actually not white. And so will we ever get a movie with him, with a Black actor that plays him? That would be something.
Would.
Yeah.
Right.
This isn't particularly related to inaccuracies, but I was talking to, I learned something new within the past week. So on Sunday, I spoke to my friend Bianca, and I guess this is an upward trend, right? She refers to herself and her children as melanated as opposed to Black, because melanation has to do with the pigmentation in your skin. And they are starting to, there is a theory, and I don't know how much research has been done on this particular theory, but their theory is that all races were once melanated. And over time and through inbreeding and all of this stuff, that's how we wound up with all these different colors. But in the beginning, we
That's
were all
partly true.
dark-skinned and descended from Africa.
Obviously,
yeah.
my study goes a lot into prehistory and prehistoric people, and Homo sapiens originated in Africa, and the first Homo sapiens, the first human beings, were Black, like all of us.
Yeah.
And we all, then when they started traveling, they came to different places, and as we evolved from like Homo erectus and so forth and so on to Homo sapien, our skin colors started to change depending on where our tribe had ended up. And obviously, the humans that stayed in the hot countries stayed darker to protect them. But people like Europeans and Westerners, obviously, because we're in colder climates, we didn't need that protection, and so it faded out over time.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
And they found, I don't know, a couple of years ago now, maybe a while now, that the Aboriginals of Australia have the most ancient DNA right now in the world. Because when they went, because apparently there's this great video on YouTube that shows how everybody kind of went and spread out. But apparently they went from the African continent into Australia, and then they were secluded for such a long time and remained secluded even when Australia was colonized. That they say that now today, because of that isolation and seclusion amongst themselves, that they actually carry the most ancient DNA we have available right now as a living person, not some, we found some other stuff, but so that was kind of fascinating. I thought that was kind of cool.
That is really fascinating.
Really cool.
And
yeah, I think because of the horns, to be honest, I think because the horns are very Satanist or Satanistic. So I don't think people are yet ready for that reindeer goddess as a benevolent creature.
Yeah, but the pagans have an antlered god.
But he doesn't make it into, when has he ever made it into Hollywood?
That's true.
Because like the whole thing has been
Pan's
taken over
Labyrinth.
in Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's in Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh, I don't remember that movie.
Yeah, that's old,
Yeah,
right?
but that's
Pan
so that's
Forever.
so Pan has the horns.
Hmm.
Mm.
But I think we
No, I
covered
think I think I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot of information that we
right,
are sort of, and so it's one of these sort of episodes where we're just talking about whatever we want. But I
right,
do think that there are, even like if we take this episode apart, there are pockets that we can do a whole thing on because
right,
there's so much to talk about in those things, you know.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, most of my references come from television and movies, but I'm sure there are also a lot of books out there and book series that have it wrong, right?
For sure. I mean, the whole fantasy genre, which I live in most of the time,
Right.
is, you know, inaccurate and
Anything with Medusa in ever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and anything with Hecate and anything with Lilith.
Yeah. I once read a book series. I was obsessed with a book series by Sherilyn Kenyon, who is a very big fantasy writer. And I don't know, I've read almost everything she wrote, but Artemis in her books was always a bad person, always a bad goddess, always mean, and she was red-haired for some reason.
That doesn't make any sense.
And that used to be the thing that I would skip over every time I
Mhm.
read her stuff because she had, but you know, I mean, in that situation, because it's fiction,
Mhm.
I can accept it a little, like I can overlook it. I think my problem is when Hollywood makes a film about Troy or a film about Hercules or a film about whatever, and then says, oh, here's the story of Hercules, and then gives you the most bullshit story ever written. So, or whatever, you know, I think that's the thing that irks me.
Right. Yeah, well, and I see that especially since superheroes have become so popular. Many of them, there's some inaccurate piece about Olympian gods,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think when they try and make a movie and they sell you the fact that they're telling you the real story, and then you go watch it and it's the most surreal story,
Right.
I think, you know, and Hercules is one of my biggest pet peeve because I had the highest hopes for the one with the rock in it.
I
Because
don't,
they showed in the,
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of The Rock.
I was a fan until recently of The Rock, but the reason why I liked that one was because in the trailer it showed the 12 labors of Hercules. And so I thought, oh my God, they're actually going to do labors of Hercules. Wow. And then when you get to the movie, that piece is the first 30 seconds. Oh, Hercules once did this. And then you move into a whole other story that no one has ever told you about Hercules, which is, I swear to God, I could have screamed at the screen. I was like, wow, what? Like that's like a hook and bait, you know?
Mhm,
Mm.
mhm.
What are your thoughts on Disney's Hercules?
Ugh,
Or Thor.
zero to a hero. He was never zero. Or Thor. Yeah, yeah. Disney's Hercules is a big problem. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot
like
of things with Disney are a big
you know
problem.
what? That's exactly what we should do is we should watch that movie and take notes and come back and talk about how terrible it is represented. But we could probably do that for Disney for everything from Pocahontas to Little Mermaid to,
Yeah.
you know. Thor, I almost got behind a little bit. But then people say when I say this to my students go, "Oh well, it's not the original version; it's the DC or whatever Marvel version."
Right.
And I'm like, okay, but I mean, even that version said he's a god, a Norse god, and then sort of lost the very things that make him, other than the
Who
hammer.
he is. Right. Okay. Any other closing thoughts before I say
Oh,
goodbye?
that wasn't okay. Closing thoughts. Closing thoughts.
Hollywood is fucking inaccurate. We need to do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good closing thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
academics on your research teams when you're making anything ever.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Because I've seen that with other things, right? Like, I don't know, just I've seen that with other things, right? Like
Like
clearly,
period dramas. When they're making period
yeah, like
dramas and
clearly
they've got
they
a
have,
historian there deciding what they're gonna wear. They need something like that.
yes, yes, yes. That's what I keep telling Carla. I'm like, you need to market yourself as the goddess ancient history consultant to Hollywood.
I'm trying to market myself that way. I just don't, I now people have to pay, like be like, hey, Carla, we want to hire you for that. And so I don't know, who do you get into contact with to, like, I don't know how many movies are really being made right now about that. I think that ancient history could be the most fantastic TV show.
Yes.
Just doing the actual myth that actually we have, just doing it like that. It would be
It doesn't need changing.
no, because it's got so much in it.
So you guys, maybe we need to write that show and sell it to Hollywood. How does that sound? Because we all have all the time in the world. But since the antler goddess is my patron goddess, I'm afraid that some movie or television show that she's going to show up for me in popular culture and I'm going to lose my shit. Because it will be inaccurate because she's an obscure goddess to begin with.
Yeah.
And you really have to do some research to find out her origin story, So
yeah.
I have the same concern about Cabela.
Yes, that she's going to show up and it's going to be wrong, right?
Especially because she's pretty obscure as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Like, because both of those goddesses would make great characters too. And so,
yes.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yes.
For me, of course, Artemis has already been butchered. And literally every single film that's ever been made in which she is a part of, she has never been portrayed fully.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, I was thinking of Perseus. Is it Percy? No, Percy Jackson, which is one of the ones, and she's so nothing. And even in that, I mean, I was like, oh, maybe they'll at least dress her like a huntress or something. I don't know, something. No, she's like this weird. She has this curly red hair. Like, what is this? Anyways.
All right.
Yeah.
So we close this podcast afraid and disappointed. But thank you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching or listening. If you want more of The Girlfriend God, you can find The Girlfriend God and The Girlfriend God podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. The Girlfriend.